A little bit of tea toward the end of the day. It's been a busy day, been a productive day. Got out and did a few things. In the early 1920s, a Belgian priest named Georges Lemaître took the research of an American astronomer and he expounded upon it. Now, the American astronomer had discovered that all the galaxies were rushing away from one another. They were all redshifted. And this meant that at some point they had been much closer together. He didn't take it much past that, though. But Georges Lemaître was a consummate researcher. And so Lemaître, Father Georges Lemaître, who was a professor of astrophysics, took the calculations and worked them right down to the final conclusion, which was that at some point in the distant past, the entire universe had been tiny, smushed. And this shocked him. This indicated that the universe had an origin. And at the time, the prevailing wisdom was that the universe was eternal, fixed and eternal. And many physicists of the time took Lemaître's work and they added a cosmic constant, which was a fudge factor. Albert Einstein is one of them. He created the cosmological constant. He invented it. And others took that idea to the extreme in order to avoid the idea of an origin for the universe. They didn't want an origin for the universe. They wanted an eternal universe. And Georges Lemaître had presented them with a universe with a clear beginning. Georges Lemaître created the Big Bang cosmology. And when he initially presented his paper to Albert Einstein was anti-clerical. He was hostile to the clergy. It didn't matter. You could be a priest, you could be a bishop, you could be a rabbi. He was hostile. He did not trust clergymen at all. Didn't trust them. And so he was quite dismissive of Lemaître's work from the beginning. But when he went over it a second time, he realized he's right. And suddenly, all his calculations, for which he had created the cosmological constant to explain things, suddenly made sense. If you accept a universe with a beginning, you don't need the cosmological constant. You just have to accept that there was an origin point when the universe was very tiny. And this represented the beginning of the end for the steady-state universe. But of course, the Big Bang model had to be tested. And many people, including George Gamow, famous Russian-American physicist, no less, calculated that there should be evidence for the Big Bang, a background radiation, microwave radiation, permeating the universe. But of course, this was never found until the 1960s, when two American telecommunications researchers working for the Bell Company accidentally discovered it. And yeah, you can read up on that too. They discovered the evidence by accident that Gamow's apprentices were trying to find intentionally. And they actually contacted Gamow's apprentices without realizing it and said, "We've discovered this cosmic background radiation. It's all microwaves. What does it mean?" And the researchers, who have been looking for this for years, realized that they had been scooped by basically a bunch of telephone company employees. It's one of the great absurdities of the Big Bang. But the scientists went and double-checked the work of these phone company people, verified it, And yes, in the early 1970s, these two phone company employees received the Nobel Prize for discovering the cosmic background radiation that was predicted by Georges Gamow based on the calculations made by Georges Lemaître. This is the chain of evidence for the Big Bang. Something to think about, huh?